Back in the 70s and 80s, before the advent of VHS, chances are, if you saw a classic movie, it was on the 4:30 movie. With their famous theme weeks, it was a chance to see movies you never saw and get reacquainted with some old classics. So, join us now for the 4:30 movie.
This is Mark A. Altman, and you're listening to the 4:30 movie. Welcome to an all-new theme week. This week, it's Under the Sea Week on the 4:30 movie.
Glub, glub, glub.
Dive.
Remember that restaurant in Century City, Jeffrey Katzenberg?
Yeah.
They had great fries, though.
Oh, they did.
It was shaped like a submarine.
That
and
was
every
about
10
it,
minutes, they would go, prepare to dive!
Dive,
And then there would be
dive.
bubbles in the window.
Oh,
Who thought that was
Very
a good
romantic.
idea? That shows when you have stupid money at that point.
Yeah.
When you could put money into a
Like a
restaurant.
submarine
It's like a
restaurant.
submarine. Wasn't it around when Sequest came out?
yes.
Yeah,
actually.
Because submarines were going to be
It
all
was
the
pretty
rage.
cool. I ate there several times. It was silly and fun.
It was
Yeah.
silly and fun and had great fries.
Yeah.
And the rest of the food was horrible.
Awful.
And
awful.
kind of expensive.
Yeah, for what it was, for sure. Hello, I'm Mark A. Altman, and you're listening to Under the Sea Week. This is. I'm so glad to be here with our expert band of programmers who are here to tell you what to watch, when, and how to watch.
And where to eat and where not.
Some wonderful snacks for while you're watching the 4:30 movie.
Some restaurant recommendations for businesses
Special
that
report,
haven't been
French
there.
fries.
First, we have Stephen Melching. He's a writer for such series as Batman, The Brave and the Bold, X-Men, the animated series, the brilliant Star Wars Rebels, which recently completed its run on Disney XD, and the upcoming Star Wars Resistance, which debuts on Disney Channel this month. Steve Melching, welcome. Somebody bring him up. He's getting the bends. We're also here with a brilliant conceptual designer for film and television series such as Master and Commander. I like to think of it as the real Star Trek movie. And the second season of Westworld, and designer of our fantastic new 430 movie website, 430movie.com, Daren Dochterman. Welcome, Daren.
Hi there. I'm talking to you from below the ocean.
Why do you sound like David Lynch? There's Gordon Cole here.
Because when you're under the ocean, you do sound like David Lynch.
Fantastic.
That's what happens.
And last but not least, we have Ashley E. Miller. Ashley, of course, is a writer for such films as Thor, X-Men First Class, and the upcoming Red Sonja. He's written for TV shows like Fringe and Black Sails, and has the upcoming Season 2 of Lore dropping on Amazon Prime this month. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you.
And of course, I'm Mark Altman, author of the best-selling new book, So Say We All, An Oral History of Battlestar Galactica, and a writer for a bunch of TV shows, including Librarians, Agent X, and Castle. Welcome to Under the Sea Week.
Come on in, the water's fine.
Don't be scared. It's 93 degrees Celsius. Again, we're faced with a quandary, and you're probably asking, what kind of quandary is that? Well, I'll tell you what kind of quandary it is. It is that Daren may have to recuse himself because, of course, Daren worked on the wonderful James Cameron movie, The Abyss. So
He worked on a couple of undersea films.
I got a couple undersea films on my resume, so should they come up, I will. I don't think anyone needs to recuse anyone, because if I'm not going to pick them, I'm not going to pick
I
them.
want to hear stories about the
Well,
Abyss.
yeah.
So
Well,
what
I'm not saying you can't tell stories. I'm saying you can't pick your own movie.
Yeah,
You can
no,
pick your note. Wait, no.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ashley, I'm going to start with you. Monday.
Monday. So there are so many
The
great
Little
films,
Mermaid.
and you know, there's a lot of reasons to love Don Knotts. But I'm not going to pick The Incredible Mr. Liddell.
Oh.
I just want to throw that out there as
Ladyfish.
an earworm. Yeah. Gosh. Like, I love how the fish kind of walks around with like one bullet in his pocket.
Oh no!
Yeah, he
I've killed poor Steve.
Poor Steve is
drowning.
dead. It's your turn now. I am actually going to start because, look, I've got a 9-year-old. I've got a pair, God help me, of 2.5, actually really almost 3-year-olds. And so I'm going to pick Finding Nemo. Why? And it's not just because I have watched the ever-loving crap out of it recently.
Because it's better than Finding Dora.
But you know what, though? Finding Dory is pretty good. No, I mean, Finding Nemo is, I think, one of Pixar's best.
Yeah.
It is a great movie.
I agree.
And
It is
the
great.
thing that I love about it other than you can park your kids in front of it and they can just watch it, and it's like having like thanks for the babysitter, John Lasseter. It really
That's what John
is,
Lasseter said.
right? Oh my God.
See.
It's a movie that speaks to me because it is about parental fear.
Yes,
I
very
think
much so.
The thing you learn as a parent, the first thing you learn from the first scream is that being a parent is about learning to be afraid of something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
And Finding Nemo really dramatizes that fear in a lot of great ways. It very quickly just dramatizes the relationship between Nemo and his father. And
I'm sorry.
What's wrong? You just...
No, I'm just laughing because this is gonna sound crazy.
Yes.
You know how we just look. It's no secret we record these podcasts in bunches.
Wait, what?
We just did the Kids Days in the Picture movies about Hollywood, and we mentioned like 4,000 movies, right? So you're sitting here talking about the fears of being a parent, and I'm thinking, oh, Albert Brooks is so great in that movie. And then I'm thinking, oh, he was really great in Modern Romance. And then I'm thinking, Modern Romance is a great movie about Hollywood.
You have a crawl on?
And I'm like, wait a second, that's not even the show we're doing anymore. Sorry.
All right, back down to the sea.
Keep going.
For crying out loud.
No, it's just a great film. It's a great story. It's a movie about becoming a successful parent means overcoming the fear and learning to let go. And it certainly doesn't mean that when your kids need you, you don't try to help them, but it's also recognizing that there's only so many things that you can control.
And they're more resourceful than you give them credit for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful movie, in every phase of the game.
Agreed. I think it's technically one of their most beautiful looking films. I mean, it's artistically it is staggering, and I enjoy the film. It gets a little bit into cartoon land when we get above the surface and the little girl in the dentist's office.
Right.
But I think the rest of it is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. And, I was kidding around about Finding Dory. I think Finding Dory also is a terrific film. And when they announced, when Pixar announced that they were going into sequel land, it was a little scary because other than Toy Story, it didn't really feel they had franchises that lent itself. It felt like a sort of crass commercial thing. But they've really been, some of these sequels have been terrific. And never more so than Finding Dory, which
Absolutely.
I think is a wonderful film. The Pixar machine, even though they've stumbled a little more with the Good Dinosaur and stuff, their track record, I guess, along with Marvel, is unmatchable.
Totally.
I used to say that about Rob Reiner until he made North. But that was a guy who had a career that, with Spinal Tap and Princess Bride, and it just could do no wrong, and it was.
But he couldn't handle the truth.
But he couldn't handle the truth.
Deep down
but
in
but
places
but
of
yeah, I think that's a really unexpected choice, but a great choice nonetheless.
And I think that Mark, you missed an opportunity to do a sequel to Free Enterprise called Finding Nimoy.
Well, it's funny you say that because, Rob and I a couple years ago, before Nimoy passed away, had thought we had the financing for a sequel, which was going to be called Free Enterprise 2: The Wrath of Shatner. And in the film, they're trying to find Shatner. It's like a search for Shatner, who's disappeared and gone off to become a rabbi or something because he's supposed to marry Rob, and so he decides he's going to be
don't give
ordained
away
as a
all
rabbi.
the movie.
Well, it's never going to happen.
Shatner was
so they go to an art exhibit to try and get Nimoy to come on their quest with them, and there was this great scene we wrote for Leonard, and I remember we reached out to him, and he was just like, no. No.
I'm not going to do a damn thing.
And, with Shatner, we kept asking until he finally said yes on Free Enterprise. And then with Nimoy, it was the exact opposite. It's like, stop asking. I do not want to hear from you guys again.
Oh, no.
And it was funny because we had known him because I remember when we were making Shatner's 70th birthday video and we filmed Nimoy for the video, we'd said to Leonard, he says, you guys seem familiar. We said, we made this film, Free Enterprise, with William Shatner. And he said, I hate that movie. He was like, why? He goes, because everything's Bill this, Captain Kirk that. What about Spock? Because I remember he had seen at the old ABC Century City theaters because one of the people that worked there, the ticket taker, when we went to go see, you go to see how it's doing and if people are going to the theater, he said, who was just in here the other day? He said, Leonard Nimoy was sitting in the back of the theater, came to see the movie. And we're like, oh, that's cool. So
He went out scowling.
He went out scowling. So no, he was. Look, Leonard was a really interesting, smart, wonderful man, but he never made a movie in which he was under the sea, even Zombies in the Stratosphere. So perhaps we should move on from Leonard Nimoy to the Steve's choice for Tuesday.
Oh boy! Well, when you gave us this list of topics, Under the Sea, my brain immediately went to classic submarine films.
As did I.
Of course, there are a great many great submarine films. I think perhaps chief among them is John McTiernan's 1990 film, The Hunt for Red October, with Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin and Scott Glenn, Sam Neill, James Earl Jones. I mean, it's got a terrific all-star cast in a great Cold War tale of intrigue and potential nuclear Armageddon and defection from the Soviet Union, and it's
a great Basil Polidor story.
Great Basil Polidor story. Directed, John McTiernan was in the midst of an incredible streak of great films, including Die Hard and
Predator, Die Hard, Hunt for Red October.
At the peak of his powers, just delivers an incredibly entertaining geopolitical thriller that boils down Tom Clancy's sort of encyclopedic novel into a really tense thriller.
Once again, we play our dangerous game.
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery's back.
Against our old adversary, the American Navy.
Sean, how do you think that movie holds up these days?
Well, I would give it one ping only.
Do you feel as though, do you feel that it was odd to have a Russian sea captain with a Scottish accent?
I certainly don't know what you're talking about, but we had a lot of fun. They put us in a real submarine and took us under the water. At least that's what they told me.
And would you say it's more or less strange than a Spanish cavalier?
I think you ought to keep your mouth shut. That's what I think.
One last question for you, Sean. In a fight, who would win, James Bond or Jack Ryan?
Well, James Bond reacts very well to bullets. Let me tell you that.
Well, Steve, I don't know if you realize that the movie just came out in beautiful 4K from Paramount Home Video.
I don't have that many Ks on my screen at home yet.
You're lacking in Ks.
I'm lacking. I only have 1080.
Oh,
that ain't even a K.
That's not even a K. It's just over.
You got no K. No K.
I've got plasma.
Not okay.
But we should have Kay Reindell as a special guest.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Perhaps someday.
So
Someday.
for my money, Hunt for Red October is easily the most successful of the Tom Clancy adaptations.
Yes,
it's probably
totally
his
agree.
best book. And
Yes.
Personal connection story. So before I became the lovely screenwriter you see before you today,
Lovely.
I was a younger, lovelier. No, I was in a completely different line of business, and I used to work for the Navy as a contractor, and I did a lot of things involving stuff that goes underwater and kind of, looks for things that are underwater. And one of my bosses had been the captain of the USS Dallas at the time of the Hunt for Red October is set.
Wow.
So I always felt this kind of this 1 degree of separation, personal connection.
And it
to
wasn't
the story.
Scott Glenn?
It wasn't Scott Glenn.
Damn it. You figure out all this on your own, Jonesy?
Crazy Ivan.
Right.
No, I was in. I just graduated from USC Film School when the movie came out. But one of my close friends from school, Mitch Danton's older brother, was the AD on Hunt for Red October, Steve-O Danton, and so Mitch got to be an extra in the film, and you can see him in the scene where Connery's giving his big speech on the bridge of the Red October. You can see him standing behind him in a couple of shots, like, oh my God, there's Mitch behind Sean Connery in the submarine. That's so cool.
I think that's a great entry for Tuesday.
Totally. And just one more thing about it. I think that John McTiernan does something in that movie that is just, he does a lot of things great in that movie. But he makes a choice that's just brilliant. And it's starting out, Sam Neill and Sean Connery, and they're talking in Russian, and then the push in,
Yeah.
and does the transition where suddenly now they're talking in English.
Which he stole from Judgment in Nuremberg.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well there you go. But it was you know what? Great poets steal.
It's an homage.
Yeah.
And
It's
look,
a terrific
and
device.
It's a great device. It worked very effectively.
Yeah.
Less so the fact that the captain has a Scottish accent and Sam Neill has an Australian accent. And
Right.
the real Russians have a Russian accent, and then Tim Curry, I don't know what the freak he was doing as the doctor.
You know, it doesn't matter. It's a
Dr. Frank
great
Purvis.
freaking
So
movie.
entertaining.
It's super entertaining. But I have to tell you, it's so entertaining that you've scared me off my Wednesday pick.
You're-
Well, wait.
Have you lost
That's
another
one more thing
submarine?
to talk about in this film is the visual effects in it. It's
Miniatures.
so hard to do underwater effects and sea surface effects. Obviously, they had, I think, some cooperation from the Department of Defense to shoot on the aircraft carrier and get access to some hardware. But
Yeah.
Industrial Light and Magic did some really remarkable work with these submarines, shooting these large-scale models on smoke
There's
stages.
there's an interesting story about that too, because originally the visual effects were being done by Boss Film
Edlund's
under
company.
Richard Edlund, and they were doing some interesting things in smoke. They built the miniatures, and the director was having them do very strange, like multicolored underwater sort of environments for it, and it was crazy looking. And basically, McTiernan got Boss Films fired from it, and then they went to ILM.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Because I visited Boss Film while they were shooting it, and then it was gone.
Right. But the miniature work is really terrific because
It's
it
great.
seamlessly works with the...
It-
the only thing that doesn't work is that sort of green screen shot at the end when
Right.
they're in the harbor and it's Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin on the the crow's nest or whatever of the submarine.
tower.
That's the conning tower, and that and they hold that shot a little too long. It's like feels like bad rear projection.
But just like when they built that part of the submarine that they were towing around the harbors, I mean it's incredible. I mean it's a great set piece.
It's a
that they
super movie. It's intense. There's some great performances. Alec Baldwin is still the best Jack Ryan.
Easily.
I don't know if you watched the new show on Amazon.
Not yet.
The jury's still out on Krasinski. I haven't watched the whole thing.
When I was a boy in Vilnius, my grandfather taught me to fish.
But Alec Baldwin is truly terrific in that. Back in his matinee idol days,
Yeah.
rather than supporting. And then you had Fred Dalton Thompson, who sort of owned the '80s. With these great scene-stealing performance. He wasn't an actor; he was a lawyer. He came out of the Nixon White House. But boy, is he good in that movie!
Yep.
Just in a scene or two on the aircraft carrier.
so good in that movie. And of
And
course,
James Earl
James Earl Jones,
Jones,
who's
Admiral.
terrific.
And I was never here.
Yeah, and Wendell Pierce is playing that character in the Amazon series, and I love Wendell Pierce from The Wire, but he doesn't have the warmth and that James Earl Jones I thought brought to the character of James Greer. And then he was sort of like Judi Dench because he continued through multiple Jack
multiple
Ryans,
Ryans, yeah.
but it was always James Earl Jones. Even when the Ryan changed.
Suddenly he grows up in Harrison Ford.
And then he becomes Ben Affleck, which then I think was Morgan Freeman playing Greer. So Tuesday. So that was
That's
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So
Oh.
Wednesday, I would say, I was going to say after you said Hunt for Red October, I had to reevaluate because I was going to go with Crimson Tide,
Yeah.
which is basically the same era. I actually like it better than Hunt for Red October.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman are on fire. It's Tony Scott's best movie.
I wouldn't go that far.
I think it's Tony Scott's best movie. I love it. I love it to death. Very aware, sir.
I think it's good, but to me it's
Great Hans Zimmer score.
Yeah.
I think there's more tension. I think it's better shot. It's just everything about it. But because it's so close to Hunt for Red October, I think I'm gonna not go with Crimson Tide, but I'm gonna go with. No, I'm not.
The Incredible Mr. Limpet.
No, Titanic. No, I'm going to go with it's Under the Sea Now. And no, I'm going to go Spy Who Loved Me? No, can't do that. We already did James Bond week. But that could technically land. No. I'm going to go with Ice Station Zebra. And why am I going to go with Ice Station Zebra? Because one of the writers who worked on the script is the great Paddy Chayefsky. And one of the things about Ice Station Zebra, which you would think based on, it's based on a sort of potboiler novel. It's kind of a race, against the Russians, Cold War thriller. But the dialogue is so good. Paddy Chayefsky, particularly, Rock Hudson and the great Patrick McGowan and Ernie Borgnine, every kid's favorite. And it has such a great cast and such sparkling wit about it. And also some great miniature work as well. Some is a little dodgy, but that's to be expected. And it is probably the last great movie from one of my favorite directors, John Sturges, who did movies like The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape and Bad Day at Black Rock. And it's probably his last great movie. By the time you get to The Eagle Has Landed, he's such an alcoholic haze that it doesn't make any sense. Even though I kind of like The Eagle Has Landed too.
And it's based on a book. Alistair MacLean,
Alistair
who was like the
MacLean's.
king who really invented the whole genre of novels that your dad buys at the airport.
Right. Well, and then you also could say then Jack Higgins, Raised the Titanic, was in that genre as well. But
that was Clive Cussler.
Oh, Clive Cussler, right.
But
Clive
yes, it
Cussler.
was the same genre.
Yeah. Jack Higgins was The Island, right? Never mind. Okay.
No,
So
that's when you go to.
So anyway,
Yeah,
I
as soon
love.
as we get into books, we fall apart.
I love right, because that requires reading is fundamental, whereas movies are fundamental.
and Ice Station Zebra was also, famously Howard Hughes' favorite movie, and apparently he would tell the TV station that he owned to play it like every night, and he would watch it in his suite in
White
Las
House.
Vegas.
Yeah.
And he would just watch it over and over again, growing his fingernails long and being incredibly filthy. But
That's how I do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, it's an odd movie because it's very 60s, and yet it's got an unrealness about the whole thing. It's lit very unnaturally, and there's just an odd thing about it. It's almost a 70s disaster movie without being a
And I feel
disaster
to
movie.
me it's more redolent of a 60s Star Trek episode. And I think that's what I like about it. By the time you get to the third act, they're on the sort of styrofoam sets, which are, sort of the stand-in for the North Pole.
Right.
And then Jim Brown's in it, who's great, by
Right.
the way. But then you have the captain of the ship, Rock Hudson, who's very Shatner-esque in that role. Very powerful and quick-witted and in command, and you could see how much people really respect him.
Right.
And so to me, it has kind of the feel of a 60s Star Trek episode, which is probably why I'm so fond of it. It's not a perfect movie. I probably would have gone with Crimson Tide if Steve hadn't gone with Hunt for Red October, but I feel that they're so similar and they're made almost contemporaneously. I think Hunt for Red October was late 80s and then
1990.
1990, and then Crimson Tide was what, 92, 93?
95.
95, okay, but close.
Yeah.
So
Also, I think Ice Station Zebra is one of those films that feels like a perfect 4:30 movie that you would see
Totally.
as a 4:30
I think
movie.
they actually did have it on the 4:30 movie.
It's like it's an adventure.
Even though there's no zebras in it.
No, I know that's what's really strange. And why would you keep zebra
Yeah.
on ice?
I mean, we have the ice.
they live in
They have the station.
but
no
Africa,
zebras.
I don't understand. No, but I think it's the kind of thing like as a kid, you go, oh yeah, this is cool, this is awesome. I mean,
Well, they're racing against the Russians to find a satellite that has the film of nuclear testing or a nuclear thing.
Yeah. Why would you
not
put that in
boring.
a satellite? I don't know. But
you
okay,
do,
there you go.
yeah.
And I'm not a fan of Michel Legrand in general. I hate his score for Never Say Never Again.
Oh, my God.
I like his score for Thomas Crown Affair, but his score for Ice Station Zebra is quite good. And
It's in my rotation, my iTunes playlist, my writing playlist. I actually listen to
Oh, you
it.
mean you don't have it on social where everybody can see what you're listening to? That to me is the most. You see, every time iTunes is saying, would you like your friends to know what you're listening to? No,
really.
I
No.
don't really want them
I
to
don't
know.
want them to know that I'm listening to the soundtrack from Mannequin.
Yeah, or Grease. But, the thing is, I don't care what they're listening to.
Yeah, and why would they care what I'm listening to? Huh?
Actually, don't try and fool us. It's the soundtrack to Mannequin 2.
Mannequin on 2 on the move. Yeah, because he's a big Kim Cattrall fan.
Who isn't?
So, Ice
Those
Station
Adam
Zebra
Nimoy.
is my pick for Wednesday. Daren, Thursday.
Thursday. Well, I'm surprised no one has picked this one yet. 20,000 Leagues Under the
Yes.
Sea.
Perfect. Great. Great.
I mean, it's...
In fact, we might want to move that up to Monday. I don't know.
Well,
that seems like a Monday movie to me.
You can
maybe.
move
I
it
don't know.
wherever you want, but I'm putting it straight into Thursday because it's just glorious, and it is the movie that sort of brought the Disney studios into reality, and it was done. He put all his wherewithal and all his talents and all his people in on this big bet, and nearly lost the studio over it because they had filmed the ending and it wasn't working, and they had to go back to Bank of America to get a loan to redo the entire ending of the movie.
Wow.
And it's a glorious example of that sort of time in our history, in the filmmaking history, where this is the most complex fantasy film ever made for the time. Glorious visuals. The Nautilus, designed by Harper Goff, is pretty much the perfect sort of certainly 1800s submarine design.
Just iconic. One of the most
Iconic.
iconic submarine designs
Yeah,
of
but
all
I don't
time.
want to switch movies because I do not want Finding Nemo to replace 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea again.
That's a little Disneyland joke.
Yes.
God, that was, it was so offensive to me when they pulled
I agree.
20,000 Leagues because it's such
Well,
an
it
iconic Disney
wasn't
plan.
20,000 Leagues. It was the submarine voyage. And as a kid, that was one of my favorite rides at Disneyland.
But you get attacked by the squid at the end.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah, but I mean, the Disney World.
Disney World did,
had the
yeah.
Nautilus design and everything.
Right.
The
Disneyland had
are
the,
just
had the
regular,
sea serpent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Disneyland, they were just regular looking Navy
Okay, so
subs.
Nemo's okay then.
I loved that movie as a kid, and I loved it was Mysterious Island.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, there was something about that ship, and it was all such a perfect adventure. And as an adult, I can also appreciate it because you realize, oh shit, that story, that book, that movie, they're about something. Nemo isn't just kind of floating around for no reason under the waves. It's
No.
like it is really this very interesting meditation on the relationship between technology and civilization.
He is Khan.
Yeah, he is.
Well, and it's worth saying, too, the performances in that movie, two of my favorite actors, Kirk Douglas, who I love, but James Mason, who is one of my absolute favorites. And
You
he's
call
so
that murder?
Oh, my God, James Mason, what are you doing here?
Back from the
I
dead.
haven't- we're so happy to have you. Will you come back for North by Northwest, please?
All of these dishes are from my ocean kitchen.
Wow,
And I tell you, as a kid watching that movie on TV, that squid at the end was
It's the scariest thing
terrifying.
ever.
That,
Yeah.
when he's getting drawn towards that
The
freaking beak.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's horrifying.
And of course, you had Peter Lorre too, who was,
I guess
not who
this
you would
isn't
expect in a
lamb, Dan.
kids' film. He's sitting there
Lorre.
shooting up morphine. It's like, I hate kitties. But Peter Lorre is just so, from M to 20,000
Yeah, right.
Leagues Under the Sea. But he's another actor who I just adored, and
I don't think we can trust Captain Nemo.
oh my God.
And of course, Kirk Douglas's little musical.
Oh gosh, his
Number.
little sea shanty.
Yeah,
God, so
it's
Disney.
It's so Disney, and there's some disturbing views of his buttocks as they are dancing. It's
Can we get a time code on that so the kids at home can
yeah, no, they can find it themselves.
See,
They'll-
After stop 4.
This isn't really that related to this, but I have to say, Kirk Douglas is a really remarkable guy.
yeah,
Yes.
Not only his career, not only for what he did during the Blacklist, but also, a lot of people don't know this, but him and his wife Ann Douglas donate a lot of money to Los Angeles to build parks.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the parks, playgrounds around the Los Angeles area, either new or some that are sort of run down, are rebuilt thanks to the generosity of Kirk and Ann Douglas, and I think it's a really remarkable thing that they've done. This is a case of people who are putting their money where their mouth is and who are giving back. So much, not just worried about, tax cuts for the rich, but they're actually, looking out for the next generation. And, he's just a
Young
remarkable...
kids need to play outside. 20,000 leagues.
And Kirk Douglas was one of those great sort of old Hollywood actors that I would see around town all the time. He was always coming out for screenings and stuff.
Yep.
I saw him at the Egyptian Theater all the time. He would come down to talk about a film, or I saw him at the TV Academy. They did a screening of something. And even he's in his 90s, he's out there still sharp as a tack. And
he still looks like he can beat up his son.
Oh, yeah.
I wish they would give him like a cameo in one of the Ant-Man movies. Like I would love to see Kirk Douglas,
Or at least give him like the CGI, hey, he's a young dude treatment.
Yeah.
Right? So you could have truly unsettling shots of his buttocks.
Oh my God, you're killing me here. But yeah, of course, that's a fantastic suggestion, and we were remiss not to mention it earlier.
Totally.
Well, there are a lot of great under the sea movies. I mean, we've got 4 choices so far. I mean, there's a bunch that we could
There's a
talk
ton
about
more.
for our final
It
slot.
goes the TV movie Man from Atlantis.
Which I believe was a adaptation of Namor. It is actually supposed to be Prince Namor.
Prince Namor.
Well, that they initially started out to do that and didn't get the rights?
I guess so.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it was.
What do you mean?
I know. I mean, it
Mr.
was like
Miller?
that's what was where it was taken.
It's kind of incredible that Universal has had those Submariner rights all these years and done nothing with it.
Yeah.
Even during the heyday of the maybe they're waiting to see how Aquaman does, but you think that Namor is such a low hanging fruit, it would make sense to do Submariner. He's such a beloved character.
What are you calling a fruit?
Oh my God.
So Steve, you were saying Friday.
Well, I mean, we probably should first talk about a film we referenced earlier, James Cameron's 1989 film The Abyss,
Yes.
Absolutely,
which was groundbreaking on so many levels. The
not
scale
as
of that production.
groundbreaking as Deep Star 6 and Leviathan.
Oh my God, man.
Oh boy,
That was the Dante's Peak volcano matchup of
That's true.
that year.
oh my God.
Leviathan was. I mean, Deep Star 6 was really bad. Leviathan made Deep Star 6 look like The Abyss. I mean, holy crap.
George Cosmatos.
Crazy. They all came
directed
out
it,
the same year.
Which
It's like
is
they
nuts
all got
because-
wind that Cameron was making this film, and I
Yep.
think decided to, James Cameron's going to do an underwater picture. We got to do one too.
It's interesting because several of the people on the crew had worked on Leviathan before that. So
Wow.
Leviathan was actually made before The Abyss was.
So The Abyss was Cameron's basically his third film.
It was his third film.
Big film as a director after Terminator and Aliens.
Yeah.
And Piranha 2: The
Piranha 2.
Spawning.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And he called it his answer to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Interesting.
That's what he considered it, which I think is very misguided. Because I think he wanted it to be a more of a love story and an exploration of humanity's place on the earth. But I think it works way better as an action movie.
It's kind of a schizophrenic
as
movie.
a thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than the underwater creatures.
The husband-wife relationship, I thought, was really great.
It's
Really?
it is.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I kind of feel like it totally works as an action film. It totally works as spectacle. But like a lot of his films, the love story was a little ham-fisted, I felt. I like Ed Harris and I like Mary Elizabeth Antonio, but I felt that the whole story of this sort of estranged couple that comes back together, the pressure cooker of literal and figurative forces it didn't work as well for me. But it's like most of his work, such a remarkable achievement in terms of filmmaking, in terms of sort of pushing the envelope of the medium. I mean, it really is a staggering.
Well, just building that set, like Daren I'm sure can talk about this. They built the set of the Deep Core station in what is it, an abandoned nuclear
In
plant?
an abandoned nuclear containment vessel on land down in South Carolina in a little town called Gaffney.
And you were there.
I was there for many months. It was the first movie I worked on officially, and I turned 21 on that set. And it was unfreaking believable because not only did the art department have to build sets, but they had to build life support. And everything was built practically real, for all intents and purposes. But it was amazing because all the actors were placed in these horrific situations, and I think they did the best they could to sort of deal with it. But to be fair, Jim Cameron put himself in exactly the same position, and he was just as threatened by the surroundings as everybody else. Right. But Jim didn't get to come out of the tank, while they were resetting. The actors got to go up to the surface and decompress a bit. Jim was down there all freaking day, and it took him an hour and a half to decompress after being at 30 feet below.
Jesus.
It was unbelievable, the stress that, not only Jim was dealing with from the studio for not going over budget, but physically, the taxing that the schedule and the filming underwater had on everybody. Wow. But it was really an amazing accomplishment, and Gail Ann Hurd was the producer, and Jim was there, and they had just gotten a divorce. So that's their story.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating, and I got to work with so many great people on that film, and it was almost impossible to do. And the funny thing is that every movie that I've worked on since has been a piece of cake compared to that.
I believe it.
Well, look, I think that it seems like The Abyss is an easy slam dunk for Friday, but before we commit to that,
I think we got a lot
look
more.
at some of the
Some
other films that are potentially.
Well, why don't we talk about Wolfgang Petersen's 1981 film Das Boot?
Okay, so I think the great accomplishment of that film is that when at the end of it, spoiler alert, the Royal Air Force bombs the unholy shit out of that boat. We're like looking into the sky and we're thinking, "Oh, you stupid Brits!"
Wait a minute.
They're the Nazis.
Yeah.
One of the few lines of House of the Dead that stayed in that dreadful piece of garbage that I was involved with was when Wolfgang Peterson, when Jürgen Prochnow steps
who's
out,
the star of Das Boot,
onto the deck of this fishing trawler, and he's wearing the actual hat he wore in Das Boot, and the kid says, "Who's the U-boat commander?" And I was so glad. That was sort of an homage to Das Boot and Risky Business. So it was great. And Jürgen Prochnow, because at that point Uwe was just drawing out pages of script and just having people ad-lib and turning the movie into a complete farce. And Jürgen Prochnow just lost his thing. He said, "I signed up to make this script. Why are we changing it?" I'm like, "God bless you, Jürgen. I love you for life. I already loved you in Das Boot, and I love you even more now." But yeah, it was.
I mean, this is a film. I believe was it a television miniseries in Germany initially, and released theatrically in the United or overseas.
That's
worldwide.
why there's an extended cut.
Yeah,
right? Because it's not really an extended cut. It's just the whole. That's the thing.
The thing.
Yeah.
And the submarine pen that you see in it is the submarine pen in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And the miniature submarine.
Correct.
They use the same remote-controlled miniature
where
submarine.
there
Movies are happening at the same time.
Now, I have to say, Das Boot is clearly a masterpiece, and we love it. Do you rush home from school to watch
you might be
Das Boot?
"Ooh, Das Boot, it's this obscure, semi-obscure German film from 40 years ago. I better get home
We're not showing the
quick."
dub version.
It's
We're showing the
subtitled.
subtitle version. So I kind of feel like maybe...
I just want to throw it out there.
Yeah,
It's an
absolutely
important
legitimate.
film.
Very important.
Well, along those lines, I'm going to have to mention another movie that I worked on, Kelsey Grammer in
Down Periscope.
Down Periscope.
All right.
I thought you were going to say Deep Blue Sea.
No, Kelsey Grammer wasn't in that.
Yeah.
But that's another one that I was thinking about. But I think Down Periscope is definitely, it's a submarine movie. It's the wackiest crew in the Navy, and it's terrible. But it meant well. Look, David S. Ward, who wrote
The Sting.
and Major League,
Right.
directed and wrote this, and he had a slew of very talented comic actors come in for this, and there's a bunch of like Toby Huff, who we saw later in many things, including the TV show about the start of the computer.
Toby Huss.
Toby Hooper.
Halt and Catch Fire.
Yes.
I remember him from The Adventures of Pete and Pete, which was a fantastic Nickelodeon live-action show from the early 90s.
But I remember seeing him in dailies just riffing on stuff, and he would never stop, and he was the most hilarious thing. And they cut all the funny stuff out. Kelsey Grammer, who was fresh off a DUI or something, was... he did his best, and I think he did a pretty good job. The Admiral, played by Rip Torn, is playing Rip Torn in it, and he's doing his great thing. And it's kind of better than it should be, but it's not good. It's kind of weird, but it's enjoyable to watch.
Okay, moving right along.
Thank you. If we're going to go a little bit out of the box,
yes,
there's always George C. Scott in Day of the Dolphin.
Ma loves Pa.
But they're not really under the sea. The dolphins are under the sea.
That's true, but he's not.
But nobody else is under the sea.
You're right. So that's a perfect segue into bringing up the incredible Mr. Limpet. Now, I've been joking about this the whole podcast, but honestly, when I was a kid, and I actually saw it on the 4:30 movie, I loved The Incredible Mr. Limpet.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why it stuck with me, other than I kind of love the idea of the animation with like the live action, is it really was this story about this guy who wanted to be useful.
Yep.
He wanted to be like everybody else. He wanted to be a part of something, and this was his big chance. And he struggles, and you love him, and he's charming, and it's an adorable.
It's the same exact story as Captain America.
It really is, actually.
Instead of turning into a muscle-bound guy, he turns into a fish.
Exactly, and I love it. Like when he fights Thanos in the I always get those confused. But no, you're absolutely right. It's totally Captain America.
Yeah. I love Incredible Mr. Limpet, and just the animation alone is glorious.
Was it Warner Brothers?
Yeah.
I love Charlie the Tuna and the Starkist tuna commercials. I really miss him. Him and the Grimace from the old McDonald's commercials. I don't know what happened to these legendary characters. Other movies that for consideration for Friday?
We definitely forgot Wes Anderson's film *The Life Aquatic* with Steve Zissou, which is a film that I've always really enjoyed. Bill Murray, of course, as Steve Zissou. I just love the whole sort of vibe of who's the French oceanographer? Cousteau. The whole Cousteau vibe going with Steve Zissou and his team of guys. And, Jeff Goldblum as the rival oceanographer is hilarious. And Kate Blanchett is in it, and she's terrific. And, of course, Owen Wilson and Willem Dafoe as his sort of sidekick. I mean,
am I imagining this?
Cast.
Or is there, maybe I'm imagining this, is there an homage to Buckaroo Banzai at the end of that movie?
I think, because I think they're all kind of doing that kind of march together, right? Is that?
Yeah,
am I
feel like there is. I could be completely misremembering it, but it feels like that happened, and like it might have even been the music, but I could be wrong.
But he just does these, Wes Anderson is, kind of at his Wes Anderson-est
right
in that movie with some of his filmmaking affectations with
a little tweak.
Yeah, with like those the French versions of the David Bowie songs or the cutaway. I love that cutaway shot of their ship where it's very childlike.
Yes.
In a way, it's got a real charm to it. And, and it's this great story about Bill Murray trying to track down the shark that ate his friend, and document it. And it's just I just always found it really enchanting. I really enjoyed that movie.
It's basically Moby Dick.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, you guys were really mean and shot down my Spy Who Loved Me idea. So I'm going to instead replace that with, the star of Spy Who Loved Me, Kurt Jurgens, was in a classic sub movie called The Enemy, Below,
Yes.
which is a wonderful, a sub movie. Early when one of the classic sub movies that in fact was an inspiration for the great Star Trek episode Balance of Terror. Now, if you're stuck on, as I am, The Spy Who Loved Me, it also starred the great Barbara Bach as Agent XXX Major Masova, who is married to Ringo Starr.
Yes.
Ringo
Waiting
Starr,
for you to
the
come
of
to
Yellow
course,
Submarine.
is the captain of the Yellow Submarine, which is another great movie to consider for Friday. Not only filled with amazing tunes, but also features a really iconic submarine.
Which is yellow.
But it flies in the air.
And underwater. And it goes to
The land of the Blue
The
Meanies.
land of the Blue Meanies and to Pepperland. Wouldn't you? Isn't that a great way to end a week? In Pepperland?
No.
No, not really.
Okay, so fine. So what about Run Silent, Run Deep with the great Burt Lancaster and
Absolutely.
Clark Gable? I
In
love
fact,
that movie.
Run Silent, Run Deep. The very first thing, my very first produced credit on Andromeda. We wrote this space battle episode that was very much inspired by Run Silent, Run Deep. So that has that movie has a very special place in my heart.
I also really like the Bedford Incident with Richard Widmark and Sidney Poitier, which was another great sub movie. And then another director who never really they kept heralding him as the next James Cameron. He never became the next James Cameron, but he did some really interesting B+ movies. He did U-571 and of course Breakdown, and then Terminator 3 also. Didn't he
Right.
do Terminator 3?
Jonathan Mostow.
Jonathan
Mostow,
Mostow, who never really broke out, but yet was consistently good, but never great.
Right.
But I like U-571. I don't put it in the classics like Enemy Below or Run Silent, Run Deep, but or Crimson Tide.
It's a solid movie. It is
solid.
a solid movie as well. Along with, I always kind of get it mixed up with K-19, the Widowmaker. It's Harrison Ford. He plays a Russian. Is he Russian in that or German? K-19. He's Russian, I believe.
Russian,
I
yeah.
think he's Harrison Ford.
Yeah, he's much like Sean Connery.
Right, his
he's Sean
father
Connery.
before him, yes.
We didn't mention a film that only takes place partially under the sea. It takes place mostly on top of the sea, and that's 1995's Waterworld.
Oh yeah,
Kevin
I don't really
Reynolds.
think that is an under the sea movie though. I
It's
think
on
it's
top of the sea.
Well,
post-apocalyptic.
everyone is under the sea in the movie.
Yeah,
Technically, yeah.
kind
we're
of.
all under the
I think
sea.
it's more appropriate for post-apocalypse
Yeah.
week.
So then here is one that takes place entirely
that's for
under the sea.
drink your own urine week.
Oh.
Maybe this might be
that's
another
a
week
short,
as well.
Yeah.
very short week.
But Deep Blue Sea,
Yeah,
right?
Darren
Which
walked on
I
that
worked
too.
on that. Yeah.
Did you really? That
Yeah.
that movie has like one of obviously we all know what I'm talking about. Like
Yeah.
it's not a great movie and it has one of the greatest moments in film
Yeah.
history.
But is that Shark Week or is that? I think it's
We can
probably
say that
Shark
it's
Week.
Shark Week.
But you know what else would be a great for because it has sea in the title. So I think it is the natural is Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea
Yeah.
Right.
with Richard Basehart and
Yeah.
actually not
Our-
Richard Basehart because that was the
Right,
TV
that
series.
was a
It
TV
was
series,
Walter Pidgeon.
Yeah.
Let's see,
Yeah.
Warlords
Yeah.
from Atlantis, but that's
Our,
probably
our friend
World
Jeff
Week.
Bond would be very angry if we hadn't mentioned
We hadn't
that.
mentioned Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Irwin Allen, one of the and before it gets sort of silly in the TV series, the movie is it's quite.
And it has another
nail
good
biter.
buttocks shot of the lovely Barbara Eden.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, there's
Dun, 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 dun.
So there you
Did
go.
you pay for it?
Married to Michael and Sarah.
That's correct.
6
Wow.
Degrees of Bill Shatner. Here we come. Okay.
Well, there's Michael Crichton's Sphere.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
Maybe not.
Directed by, wasn't that a really weird person who directed that? Was it Michael Nichols or Robert Zemeckis? I
No,
don't know.
it was Barry Levinson.
Oh, Barry Levinson. I knew it was like some weird out of
Yeah.
left field choice.
But
Sharon
an
Stone,
interesting
Dustin
thing,
Hoffman, and
the submersible from Sphere was used in Deep Blue Sea.
Really?
And then, of course,
Wow,
there's,
fun facts
it's
from
not
Daren
really under the
Dochterman.
sea. It's more like it's got a submarine in it, though. Fantastic Voyage.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
That's
That's
a
under
really
the sea
short week
within
with
us
inner
all.
space.
Yes.
In inner space. Week.
It's Tiny People Week.
Right.
Incredible shrinking.
And,
Money.
and downsized.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
Well, look, we got to make a decision about Friday.
I'm
leaning towards The Abyss.
Yeah.
I agree, and mainly, I think to please my son again, who once told me, I don't know if I've told the story, maybe I have. I'll tell it again. He says to me, well, my wife says, ask your son who his heroes are. So I said, okay. And I'm thinking one of them had better be Dad. And
Good luck with that.
I know, right? It turns out, no, one of them is not.
No.
So I ask him, and he gives me a couple names I'd never heard before. And then he says, and James Cameron. And I said, oh, thank God, son. Thank God that there's some part of this that has reached you. Why? What's your favorite movie? And he goes, I don't know what you mean. I'm like, well, why are you saying James Cameron? He says, well, because he's gone deeper in the ocean than anyone. And I went, oh, wow. So, you know, and obviously, you know, in the abyss, they
But
go
in
deeper
Titanic.
than anybody.
And I joked about Titanic, but you know the filmmaking of Titanic is virtuoso filmmaking.
Yeah.
The opening scenes where they actually go to the Titanic, and of course, it really, regardless of what you think of that movie, you know, it is the perfect amalgamation of a romance and an action film. You know, in terms of the first hour, which is, you know, the sweeping romance, and the second hour, which is this, you know, action epic. It's really a remarkable film, regardless of what you think of it.
Totally. And there was absolutely room on that door. But no, I think The Abyss is
Yeah, I think
Which,
the Abyss.
you know, shamefully is not available, you know, on
In high def,
No,
Blu-ray.
it's
or
unforgivable. I think they're waiting to tie it into something.
Yeah.
So I guess I assume when he does the
Well,
next
I guess
Avatar,
next year will be the 30th
then they'll
anniversary.
finally, you know, release it on Blu-ray and 4K and everything.
I thought they were readying it for its 25th anniversary a
Well,
few years ago, and it didn't.
Jim's
make it.
been busy with his other Avatar movies.
It's a huge oversight, you know, and True Lies is also not readily available in any kind of format that's watchable.
Well, I'm sure that once Disney takes over Fox, every
we have Jedis
avenue,
fighting aliens.
every avenue will be used for money gathering. So.
Well, so Monday,
Finding Nemo,
Finding Nemo.
Tuesday,
The Hunt for Red October.
Wednesday is
is
Ice Station Zebra.
Ice Station Zebra, right?
Thursday,
was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
and Friday is.
The Abuse.
The Abyss.
Sorry, The
The
Abyss.
Abuse.
I'm still bummed about Crimson Tide being left out. I have to tell you.
Well,
But that's what horse racing is all about.
Gene Hackman.
Gene
Gene
Hackman.
Week.
Well, yeah,
I like
we'll have
Gene
another
Hackman.
shot at Gene Hackman Week.
Did I
So-
see Crimson Tide with you? I think we might have
You
seen it
did.
together at the Beverly Connection Theater.
Yes,
and I
you
recall
did.
having to really use the bathroom, and I had to run out as soon as the
Especially with all the running
tension
water.
was released.
Well,
at
Steve,
around
that's
the
a
restroom.
fascinating memory.
Yes, a great anecdote.
I want to thank everybody for joining us for Under the Sea Week. We're going to be back next week with an all-new episode of the 430 Movie. Guys, if they want to continue the conversation, or if there are movies we forgot about that they people want to bring to your attention, where can they find you, Steve Melching?
At Stephen Melching on Twitter.
Daren Dochterman?
On Twitter, at Daren Doc with one R.
Ashley Miller?
On Twitter, at AshMaster0.
You can reach me on Twitter and Instagram at Mark A. Altman. And I want to remind you that Ashley's worked on Lore Season 2, which drops on Amazon Prime this month. Steve has Star Wars Resistance coming to the Disney Channel. And, of course, my oral history of Battlestar Galactica, So Say We All, is available now in bookstores everywhere. We hope you'll visit us at the 430 Movie website, where you can find great swag and also previous...
430movie.com, 430movie.com.
And you can also find previous episodes in case you've missed any of these exciting theme weeks. We also want to do a shout out and a very special thanks to our engineer, Bill Ritter, who makes it all possible, along with all our friends here at Electric Entertainment, where we're using the Electric Studios to record our podcast. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dean. And we'll see you next week for an all-new episode of the 430 Movie.